February 13th, 1900, Volume 3. Mortification is like lime. This morning, after receiving communion, I saw my adorable Jesus, but completely changed in his appearance. He seemed to be serious, all distant, in the act of reproaching me. What a tormenting change! Instead of being relieved, I felt my poor heart more oppressed, more pierced, before such an unusual presence of Jesus. Yet I felt all the need for a relief from the pains of his privations suffered in the past days, which were such that I seemed to be alive, but agonizing, and in a continuous state of violence. But blessed Jesus, wanting to reproach me because I was looking for relief in his presence, while I was to look for nothing but suffering, told me, "Just as lime has the virtue of cooking the objects which are thrown into it, so does mortification have the virtue of cooking all the imperfections and defects which are present in the soul. And it reaches the point of spiritualizing also the body, surrounding it like a circle, and sealing all virtues within it. Until mortification has cooked you well, both the soul and the body, to the point of undoing it, I will not be able to seal in you perfectly the mark of my crucifixion." After this, someone, I can't really tell who he was, but he seemed to be an angel, pierced my hands and feet through, and Jesus, with a lance which came out from his heart, pierced mine, to my extreme pain. Then he disappeared, leaving me more afflicted than before. Oh, how well I understood the necessity of mortification, my inseparable friend, and how there was not even a shadow of friendship in me with mortification. Ah, Lord, bind me yourself with indissoluble friendship to this good friend, because on my own I can only show myself all coarseness. And she, not seeing herself being welcomed nicely, uses all regards with me, and keeps sparing me, fearing that I might come to the point of turning my back on her completely. So she never accomplishes with me her beautiful and majestic crafting, because as long as we remain a little distant, her prodigious hands cannot reach me, in order to be able to work me and present me to you as a work worthy of her most holy hands. February 13th, 1919, Volume 12. Jesus speaks to Luisa about her new office. Continuing in my usual state, I was searching, and with anxiousness, for my always lovable Jesus. And all goodness he came and told me, "Beloved daughter of my will, do you want to come into my will and substitute in a divine manner for the many acts which have not been done by our brothers, for many others done humanly, and for other acts, holy, yes, but human, and not done in the divine order? I did everything in the divine order, but I am not yet content. I want the creature to enter my will and to come to kiss my acts in a divine manner, substituting for all just as I did. Therefore come, come, I long for it. I desire it so much that I put myself in feast when I see that the creature enters into this divine environment, and multiplying herself with me, she multiplies in everyone, and loves, repairs, substitutes for all and for each one in a divine manner. I no longer recognize human things in her, but all my things. My love rises and multiplies itself. Reparations multiply to infinity. Substitutions are divine. What joy! What feast! The saints themselves unite with me and make feast, ardently waiting for a sister of theirs to substitute for their own acts, holy in the human order, but not in the divine order. They pray me to soon let this creature enter this divine environment, and that all of their acts be substituted only with the divine will, and with the mark of the Eternal One. I did this for all. Now I want you to do it for all. And my Jesus, your words confuse me. I know that you alone are enough for everything, and besides, everything is yours. And Jesus, surely I am enough for all, but am I not free to elect one creature, give her this office together with me, and make her be enough for all? And then, what do you care if this is all mine? Can I perhaps not give you what is mine? This is all my contentment, to give you everything. If you do not correspond to me and do not accept it, you make me discontent, defrauding me of that whole chain of graces which I gave you to bring you to this point of calling you to this office. I entered into Jesus and did what Jesus was doing. Oh, how clearly I could see what Jesus had told me. I remained multiplied with him in everyone, even in the saints. But as I returned into myself, some doubts arose within me, and Jesus added, "One single act of my will, even one instant, is full of creative life, and whoever contains this life can, in that instant, give life to everything and preserve everything. From that act of my will alone, the sun receives the life of the light, the earth preservation, the creatures life. Why do you doubt then? And then I have my court in heaven, and I want another court on earth. Guess, who is going to form this court? And the souls who will live in your will. And he, brava, they are exactly the ones who, without the shadow of interest and of personal sanctity, but rather fully divine, will live for the good of their brothers, forming one single echo with heaven. February 13th, 1923, Volume 15, The Good of Being Faithful and Attentive. I felt all afflicted, and my sweet Jesus, making himself seen for just a little, told me, "My daughter, courage, be faithful and attentive to me, because faithfulness and attentiveness produce equality of humors in the soul, forming one single humor, and establishing perfect peace. And this peace renders her dominator in such a way that she does whatever she wants, and reaches wherever she wants. Especially for one who lives in my will, it happens as to the sun. It never changes. One is its act, to unleash light and heat from its sphere. It does not do something today and something else tomorrow. It is always faithful and constant in doing the same thing. But while its act is one, as this act descends and hits the surface of the earth, how many different acts do not take place? They are almost innumerable. If it finds a flower half closed, with the kiss of its light and with its heat, it opens it and gives it color and fragrance. If it finds an unripe fruit, it matures it and gives it sweetness. If it finds fields that are green, it makes them golden. If it finds air that is putrid, it purifies it with the kiss of its light. In sum, to all things it gives what they need for their existence on this earth, and to be able to produce the utility which they contain, and which has been established by God. So by its faithfulness and by doing always the same thing, the sun is the fulfillment of the divine will over all created things. Oh, if the sun were not always equal in sending its light, how many fluctuations, how many disorders there would be on earth, and man would not be able to make any calculation, either about fields or about plants. He would say, If the sun does not send me its light and its heat, I do not know when I am supposed to harvest, nor when the fruits will mature. The same happens with the soul who is faithful and attentive. In my will one is her act, but its effects are innumerable. On the other hand, if she is inconstant and inattentive, neither she nor I can make any calculation, nor establish the good which she can produce. February 13th, 1927, Volume 20. Until the divine will is known and has its kingdom, the glory of God in the creation will be incomplete. Example of a king. I was following the divine will and its acts in the creation, and a doubt arose in my mind. How can it be that Jesus says that until the kingdom of his will comes upon earth, the glory of creation and redemption will be incomplete? How can this be? Does the supreme will perhaps not have the virtue of glorifying itself? Indeed, it possesses this virtue, and this is more than enough for its glory. Yet he says that if his will does not extend its kingdom in the midst of creatures, its glory on the part of creation will be incomplete. Now, while I was thinking of this, my adorable Jesus, surprising me with a most brilliant light that came from him, told me, "My daughter, the thing in itself is very clear. Until my will is known, and has its prime place of honor and of dominion in each being that came from our creative hands, its glory will always be incomplete. The reason is very clear. In fact, our prime purpose in creation was that, as this supreme will was released from us, being bilocated in all creation, it might extend everywhere, in the heavens, in the sun, in the sea, in the flower, in the plants, even into the earth, and in each being that came out of our creative hands, constituting itself life of everything in order to form its life in each being. And by locating itself in each creature, it might have as many of its lives and reigns to dominate for as many creatures as would come to the light. Now my will has not withdrawn. There is not one point to which its divine life does not extend. There is not one creature which is not invested by this supreme will. But while it extends everywhere and invests everything and every one, it cannot form its life. How many divine lives suffocate it in the creatures? How many deny to it the first place in their acts? How many place it after unworthy and vile acts, denying its dominion to it? And do you think that the destruction of so many divine lives of this will of mine in the creatures is something trivial? Of so many of its acts, noble and sublime, which it feels as being destroyed, while they use it to form human lives, deplorable lives, monsters that will serve for hell? Do you think this is trivial, my daughter? The detriment that our glory receives because of creation is great and incalculable, such that not even all the good of redemption could repay us. Because even with the redemption man has not come back into the unity of our will, nor does it reign fully in the creatures. How many lives which are said to be good and holy are halved between divine will and human will? Therefore our glory in the creation is not complete, and only then will it be complete when the things created by us will be of use to our own will and to those who will give it the prime place of honor, will recognize it in all things, and letting it reign in all of their acts, will constitute it absolute queen and dominating king. Don't you think it is just and right that since everything belongs to my will, and since my will is everywhere and is for all primary life of everything, all would recognize it and all would become divine will, since they all belong to it? Imagine a king who had his kingdom. All lands, villas, and cities are his exclusive property. There is nothing which does not belong to him, not only as right over his kingdom, but also as right over properties that belong to him. Now, because of his goodness of heart, this king wants to see his people happy, and so he distributes his farms, his villas, his lands to his people for free, giving them even housing in his cities, in such a way that all can be rich, with abundance, each one in his own condition. And he does all this great good to his people with the only purpose that they would recognize him as their king, giving him absolute dominion, and recognizing that the lands occupied by them were given to them for free by the king, so that he might be glorified, recognized, and loved for the good he did to them. Now, ungrateful, this people does not recognize him as its king, and it claims the right of property over the lands which it possesses, denying that they were gifts made by the king. Would this king not be defrauded of his glory for the good he has done to his people? And if you add that they use his lands without benefit for themselves, some do not work them, some remove the most beautiful plantations, some render squalid the most luxuriant gardens, in such a way as to procure themselves unhappiness and misery, all this would add dishonor and a sorrow that no one could soothe, to the detriment of the glory of the king. This is nothing but the mere shadow of what my supreme will has done, and still does. No one has given us 1 cent for receiving the good of the sun, of the sea, of the earth. Rather, we gave him everything for free, and only to make him happy, and so that he would recognize my supreme Fiat, which loved him so much and wants nothing but love and dominion. Now who could compensate that king for the detriment of the glory which his people has not given him, and soothe his intense sorrow? Imagine again that someone from that same people, investing himself with the just sorrow of his king, and wanting to repay him of his glory, begins as first to renovate the land he occupies, in such a way as to make of it the most beautiful and luxuriant garden of the kingdom. Then he says to everyone that his garden is a gift he has received from the king because he loves him. And then he calls the king into his garden and says to him, "These are your dominions. It is right that they all be at your disposal." The king is pleased with this loyalty and says, "I want you to be king together with me. Let us reign together." Oh, how he feels his glory being restored, and his sorrow soothed by this one member of his people. But this man does not stop. He covers all the paths of the kingdom, and shaking everyone with his words, calls a good handful of people to imitate him, and forms the loyal people which give the right of dominion to their king. And the king feels restored in his glory, and as a reward he gives them the title of children of his, saying to them, "My kingdom is yours. Reign, children of mine." This is my purpose, that in my kingdom there be no servants, but children and kings like me. This will happen with my divine will. Oh, how it yearns to be given back its complete glory in the creation, and that they recognize that everything belongs to it, so as to be able to say, "Everything is yours. Let us reign together." How it yearns for its knowledges to cover all paths, in order to shake, to call, to press creatures to come into my kingdom, so as to form my true children, to whom I can give the title of kings. This is why I have so much interest that these manifestations about my divine will become known, because this is about my greatest act. the fulfillment of my glory, and the complete good of creatures. February 13th, 1931, Volume 29. One who lives in the divine will lives in the center of its light, while one who does not live in it lives in the circumference of its light. How God finds his support. How the creation is mute while the creature is speaking creation. The echo of God in the creature. God, by manifesting his truths, leaves rest and continues his work. My life, my most sweet Jesus, oh please, come to my help. Do not abandon me. With the power of your most holy will, invest my poor soul and put out of me everything that troubles me and tortures me. Oh please, let the new sun of peace and love rise in me. Otherwise I feel no more strength to continue to make the sacrifice of writing. My hand is already shaking, and the pen does not flow on the paper. My love, if you do not help me, if you do not remove from me your justice that justly knocks me down in the painful state I find myself in, I feel it is impossible for me to write even one word. Therefore help me, and I will strive as much as I can to obey the one who commands me to write everything that you have told me on your most holy will. And since these are past things, I will make altogether a little mention of each thing that regards your divine will. So while I was feeling oppressed and all full of intense bitternesses, my sweet Jesus, making himself seen and sustaining me in his arms, told me, "My daughter, courage. Think that a divine will reigns in you, which is the source of perennial happiness and joy. So your bitternesses and oppressions form the clouds around the sun of my will, that prevent its rays from shining in all your being. And while it wants to render you happy, it feels the happiness it wants to give you being rejected by your bitternesses. And even though you possess a divine will at your disposal, by virtue of your bitternesses, you feel the rain that oppresses you, that fills your soul up to the brim. In fact, you must know that one who lives in my will lives in the center of the sphere of the divine sun, and can say, 'The sun is all mine.' On the other hand, one who does not live in it lives in the circumference of the light that the divine sun spreads everywhere, because my will, with its immensity, can neither deny itself to anyone, nor does it want to deny itself. It is like the sun that is forced to give light to all, even if not all of them wanted it. And why this? Only because it is light, and the nature of light is to give itself to all, to those who do not want it, and to those who want it. But what great difference exists between one who lives in the center of my divine sun and one who lives in its circumference? The first one possesses the properties of the light and all of its goods that are infinite. The light keeps her defended from all evils, so sin cannot have life in this light. And if bitternesses arise, they are like clouds that cannot have perennial life. A little breeze of my will is enough to put to flight the thickest clouds, and the soul finds herself sunken within the center of its sun that she possesses. More so since the bitternesses of one who lives in my will are always because of me, and I can say that I am embittered together with you. And if I see you crying, I cry along, because my very will renders me inseparable from one who lives in it, and I feel her pains more than if they were my own. Even more, my very will that resides in the soul calls my humanity into one who suffers, to make it repeat its life living on earth. And oh, the divine prodigies that take place, the new currents that open between heaven and earth, because of the new life of pains that Jesus has in his creature. And my heart, while it is human, is divine. It possesses the sweetest tendernesses. The attractive and powerful tendernesses of my heart are such, and so many, that as I see one who loves me suffer, my most tender love melts my heart and pours itself completely over the pains and over the heart of my beloved creature. Therefore I am with you in suffering, and I do two offices, of actor of pains and spectator, to enjoy the fruits of my pains that I keep unfolding within her. Therefore, for one who lives in my divine will, I am sun and center of her life. So we are inseparable. I feel her life palpitating in me, and she feels my life palpitating in her inmost soul. On the other hand, one who lives in the circumference of the light that the sun of my divine will spreads everywhere is not the owner of the light, because true ownership is said to be so when a good resides within oneself. And the good inside no one can take away from us, either in life or after death. On the other hand, the good outside is subject to danger, nor does it have the power to keep us safe. And the soul suffers weakness, inconstancy, passions that torment her, and she reaches the point of feeling as though far away from her Creator. Therefore, always in my will do I want you to let me continue my life upon earth. Then I was continuing my little acts of adorations, of love, of praises, of blessings in the divine Fiat for my Creator. And as I emitted my acts, the divine volition extended them everywhere and in every place where the divine will was present, which is such that there is not one point in which it is not present. And my always lovable Jesus added, "Dearest daughter of my will, you must know that my volition knows not how to do acts by half, but complete ones, and with such fullness as to be able to say, wherever there is my will, there is my act." And our divinity, seeing the adoration, the love of its creature laid within our divine will, finds its support within its immensity, at whatever point it wants to lean. So we feel our profound adoration that the creature has placed for us in our will, and we lean upon it and we rest. We feel that she loves us everywhere, and we lean within her love, and so with her praises and blessings. So the creature in our will becomes our support and our rest, and there is nothing that delights us more than finding our rest in our creature, symbol of the rest that we took after having created the whole creation. Furthermore, our divine will is present everywhere, and heaven and earth and everything are filled with it up to the brim. So all are veils that hide it, but mute veils. And if in their muteness they eloquently speak of their Creator, it is not them, but my very divine will, hidden in the created things, speaks by way of signs, as if it did not have speech. It speaks in the sun by way of signs of light and of heat, in the wind, giving penetrating and ruling signs. In the air it gives mute signs, such as to make itself breath of all creatures. Oh, if the sun, the wind, the air, and all other created things had the good of the word, how many things they would say to their Creator. But who is the speaking work of the Supreme Being? It is the creature. In creating her, we loved her so much, that we gave her the great good of the Word. Our will wanted to make itself Word of the creature. It wanted to leave the muteness of created things, and, forming in her the organ of the voice, it formed the Word so as to be able to speak. Therefore the voice of the creatures is speaking veil in which my will speaks eloquently, wisely. And since the creature does not say or do always the same thing, as the created things that never change their action, they are always at their place, doing that same action that God wants from them. Therefore my will maintains the continuous attitude of the multiplicity of the ways that are in the creature. So it can be said that it speaks not only in the voice, but it renders itself speaking in the works, in the steps, in the mind, and in the heart of creatures. But what is not our sorrow in seeing this speaking creation making use of the great good of the Word to offend us, making use of the gift to offend the giver, and prevent the great prodigy that I can make of graces, of love, of divine knowledges, of the sanctity that I can form in the speaking work of the creature? But for one who lives in my will, I am voice that speaks. And oh, how many things I keep manifesting to her! I am in continuous motion and attitude. I enjoy the full freedom to do and say surprising things, and I perform the prodigy of my will in speaking, loving, and operating in the creature. Therefore give me full freedom, and you will see what my will can do in you. Then I was thinking about all that my sweet Jesus had told me, and my beloved good repeated. My daughter, the substance of our divine being is an immensity of most pure light that produces an immensity of love. This light possesses all goods, all joys, interminable happiness, indescribable beauties. This light invests everything, sees everything, encloses everything. For it, there is neither present nor future, but one single act, always an act, that produces such multiplicity of effects as to fill heaven and earth. Now the immensity of love that this our light produces makes us love our being and everything that comes out of us with such love as to render us true and perfect lovers. So we can do nothing other than love, and give love, and ask for love. Now for one who lives in our will, our light and our love echo in the creature, and transform her into light and love. Now what happiness ours is in forming our types and models from the work of our creative hands. Therefore be attentive, and let your life be formed of nothing other than light and love, if you want to make your dear Jesus content. Then I was doing as much as I could to abandon myself completely in the divine will, and I was thinking of the many truths that blessed Jesus had manifested to me on his holy volition. Each truth embraced the infinite and contained so much light as to fill heaven and earth, and I felt the strength of the light and the weight of the infinite that, invading me completely with an unspeakable love, invited me to love them and to make them my own by putting them into practice. But while my mind was wandering within so much light, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, our work toward the creature started with creation, and our work is in the Word, because containing our creative strength, it speaks and creates. It speaks and forms the most beautiful and marvelous works. In fact, with the work of 6 fiats that we pronounced, the whole great machine of the universe was formed, including man, who was to inhabit it and be the king of our so many works. Then, after having ordered everything, our love called us to rest. But rest does not mean completion of the work. It means pause in order to resume the work again. Now, do you want to know when we resume our work again? Each time we manifest a truth, we resume the work of creation. So all that was said in the Old Testament were resumptions of the work. My coming upon earth was nothing other than resuming the work for love of creatures. My doctrine, the many truths uttered by my mouth, pointed out in clear notes my intense work for the creatures. And just as in creation our divine being rested, so with my death and resurrection I wanted to rest, also to give the time to make the fruit of my work bear fruit in the midst of creatures. But this was always rest, not the completion of the work. Our work until the end of the centuries will always be alternation of work and rest, of rest and work. See then, good daughter, what a long work I had to do with you by manifesting to you so many truths on my divine will. And since the thing that most interests our Supreme Being is to make it known, I held nothing back for a work so long, though I have often taken little breaks of rest, in order to give you the time to receive my work, and to prepare you for other surprises of the work of my creative word. Therefore be attentive to preserve and not to lose anything of the work of my word that contains an infinite value that is enough to save and sanctify an entire world. End of February 13th. Fiat.